Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, The Lens of Truth with me, Ivan Florentino, and for today's video, here is my fan art watercolor painting with ink pens of Eve from Stellarblade. Stellarblade has had an interesting year, although it was one of the best action games released this year for the PlayStation 5. Eve's character design has been put into question due to her very feminine, sexual, curvy look, and recently with the principal designer and illustrator for Naughty Dog, who created a questionable design of Eve, which made her very ugly. The proportions are off, and although some people say that it might be a stylistic choice and a very quick drawing, it still doesn't negate the fact that her face is just ugly and it does not even look like her. And the memes write themselves. It has been hilarious. So I decided to just put this together with my original drawing and painting that I did of Stellarblade and kind of just show the comparison with how she's supposed to look like. I first started off drawing it in pencil and then I inked it with micron ink pens, following with watercolor pencils and also some regular watercolor paint as well. Okay, so for this tutorial, I started off with a drafting pencil, meaning that I drew it in a very light pencil sketch. And this made it super easy to erase if I made any mistakes. And because I do often need to fix some of the proportions when it comes to drawing human bodies, or just making heads a lot bigger than they are, making sometimes the eyes bigger, this makes it easy to fix those mistakes. And I ended up buying a complete brand new set of micron ink pens for this, and I experimented with different sizes and I decided to go with the number 2002, especially for the face, where the details like the nose, the eyeballs, the iris, anything like the bangs, the ears, the lips, I wanted it to be something super thin, but then I'm also going to use different medium widths, but something not too thick where it looks a little off. So I kind of wanted to stylize Eve with a more of a graphic look, and this is actually one of the styles that I like to use, is do pencil and then do some detailed hatching line work with micron ink pens. And then for this one, since I hadn't done watercolor painting in such a long time, that's how I colored this one. So I started off with the face first, and I did like how it looks with the flowing hair, the flowing sides of her hair on her ears, the bangs, and then the long ponytail that she has. And then I started with the midsection where she has so much intricate details like the small tie. There's a lot of belt buckles, loops, and things coming from the neck surrounding her body in her chest area. Because she is this cyborg, she does have a lot of those qualities where it's like a tight suit, a lot of mechanical, plus the human body figure where everything kind of hugs around her. That these micron ink pens are easy to put in all that intricate detail. Even though I didn't do every single part of the detail, just having enough of it will make it convey that everything is there. So I worked all the way down from the head to the legs, and then her butt area, and then her arm, and then her intricate looking gloves with half the blade showing, where I worked in her fingertips, her nails. And I didn't go in so much detail on the sword just because I knew that one was going to be in more shadow later on. That's when I started using this graphic pen that came with the set. This one, I started off darkening her hair. Because most of it is in shadow, you'll see that I'm going to start shadowing all of those areas that are just pitch black. And doing this early on will also make it easier for you to find the middle tones that I'm going to use eventually when I start watercolor painting. So what I did was start with their hair, the shadows under the chin, the breast area, the back part of the leg is all in shadow, some part of the sword, as you see here, where it's all in complete shadow, some part of the gloves where all the folds are, some of the loops, some of the buckles under the arm, And then eventually I'm using a thicker pen to kind of start darkening some of those other areas. And then I'm gonna go back and start darkening that ponytail hair with this ink brush pen. And I just wanted to see how that felt. And it's like this flowing, almost like a Japanese brush. And I painted the hair with that, since most of that is also in shadow. And now everything's coming together. I really do like that contrast between the dark and then the white of the paper, which eventually will be painted, and the intricate details of the thinner micron pens. So for coloring Eve, I decided to start with these watercolor pencils. Now I must admit I haven't used watercolor pencils in so many years, so I kind of just did this on a whim. I experimented and I did this live, and to tell you the truth, I did not really like how it was turning out, just because it's one of those where it's almost like doing double work, where you're painting it just like a color pencil, like you're coloring a normal color pencil, and then you're working with the ink brush pens or just brushes with water. And for example, right here, I kind of made her skin tone a little too orange. So I knew that I was gonna have to dilute that and kind of remove some of that pigment if I could. So that's why I have this napkin ready with me where I dipped it in a little bit of water and removed some of that pigment. But I still went ahead and added the green to her suit. What I did like was that you have a lot more control in the dark areas, or in areas that I know that are going to be super detailed. So at least I did like some of the color pencils, and I knew that I didn't have a lot of variety when it came to the shades that I needed, but for the most part I used orange, and then I made sure to not use so much pressure in areas that I wanted to be light. So I did use like 3 or 4 different types of greens. And then I went and used my Arteza watercolor brush pens filled with water. And again, it was coming out okay because everything was still very light. And it's okay because I did make sure that I used a base color first and then eventually start layering all the details that I needed. And I did add this dark gray to her left side of her butt area and her thigh. So her main suit is gray with white and dark green. So the trick to watercolor pencils, I found out, was to just keep layering and layering, and then waiting for things to dry if you need to, and then going back in with your brushes and just kind of start spreading that pigment around. And this is where I started adding some shadows into her skin area just to see how that would look. And also this is going to keep things from being super flat. And one of the next steps I went for was the hair, which was a orange. And that's where I left those intentional white areas in her hair because I knew I needed the orange. And then I went in with a bit of a red orange so that it stands out, and I purposely left the middle section of her bangs for highlights. And when I started adding in the water, that's when it started coming together, that brown tones that she had in her hair. And one of the things I did was directly dip the watercolor pencil in the water, and that makes it for a super detailed and rich color as well. So I tried that in a few spots. And then after coloring and painting in that sword, which I knew was mainly going to be in black, and then I added some yellow because I will be adding the yellow background at the very end. I knew there was going to be some yellow highlights around her entire body, mainly in the outer part of the body where almost like the sun is showing. And that's what I felt like really made this come together. And after playing the game, and let me know down in the comment section below if you did play Stellarblade, one of the reference photos and most of the reference photos that you see out there, there is this very distinct yellow tone in the background where there's like explosions. It's very almost like in a sunset dystopian desert look. So there's a lot of oranges, yellows, and that's what I did for her entire body. As you can see here, I used this large palette of different yellows, oranges, and kind of diluted it just a bit and I added that all around her suit, and this helps it feel like she's in that specific area. And at the very end, what I felt like made this come together very well was play around with all of those green tones that I have. So this large watercolor compartment pigments that I have, I experimented with the darkest one and it looked really cool. It had this very, I like to say, metallic dark green that just came together very well. So I added that to her green suit, making sure to blend in where it needed to. And it just looks very sci-fi with that glossy finish. And at the very end, to correct some mistakes and add some highlights, I used my trusted white Jelly Roll pen. I added some highlights into her irises, a little bit of her hair and her bangs, into the suit, into some of those highlight areas, and that just makes some of those highlights pop. And that is how I completed Eve from Stellarblade. So let me know down in the comment section below if you like this tutorial, and thank you for watching. See you later. Bye.